Welcome to Microsoft Defender for Endpoint from Zero to Hero, Module 8.1, Troubleshooting Mode Deep Dive. If you are dealing with Defender for Endpoint and eventually facing some spikes on the CPU utilization, or Defender could be blocking some of your good application, let me show what is the safest way for you to troubleshoot those problems and fix it. Initially, I need to review some of the key security features like the Tamper Protection, real-time monitoring, behavior monitoring, and so on. And then I will show how you can enable the troubleshooting mode to allow you to make the changes, validate the changes, and then eventually add those changes into the production. Anyway, let's dive into it. Before you start troubleshooting MDE problems, it's very important for you to get familiar with all the elements when it comes to security. The first one is the active and passive mode. Microsoft introduced these two modes to make it easy the transition between a third-party AV to Defender for Endpoint. The idea is if you are running at the moment any third-party AV, we would onboard Defender as passive. It means the AV is not running as the main protection solution. And then when we remove the third-party AV, eventually Defender becomes active. And then we'll take any remediation problems when it comes to when it comes to malware and so on. You could be thinking, if eventually you are running only MDE and you are facing some troubles, a spike on the CPU, or maybe Defender is blocking, too many applications and so on, you could set Defender as passive, as for a while, to identify the problems and eventually revert to active. Unfortunately, things don't work exactly like that, as I will show in a few seconds on my demo. The next one is the PUA, or potentially unwanted application. The idea here is Microsoft, of course, will not allow any user or any administrator to download some dodgy applications like BitTorrent and so on. And then if you set PUA as block mode, any of those applications will be blocked straight away if someone tries to install. Something similar is the attack surface reductions. There are actually 16, if I have a good memory, 16 different rules. And here you can control, you can allow or block ps-exec in running some PowerShell script. You can allow or block WMI commands. You can allow or block the Office in creating child domains, and so many other controls. We can allow or we can block via ASR. Eventually, if you are facing some troubles, you might want to, for the moment, kind of, shut down this feature to identify if the, whatever is a good application could run when the ASR is not in block mode. The next one is the AV itself, the next generation protection is the AV. And then in order for you to kind of, to shut down this service, you need actually to pay attention on real-time monitoring. This is the kind of, the service where we'll make Defender in blocking things or not. Same story is when we are talking about the EDR, or the Endpoint Detection and Response. Is all about behavior monitoring. Eventually, we could shut down the AV, but let's say an application is still not running because the EDR could be blocking that application. Of course, make sure that application is a good application. I'm not talking about here any malware or so on. If we want to disable for the EDR to eventually to isolate the problem, we need actually to disable the behavior monitor. Okay. Things looks very simple. I could, just disable this guy here, disable that one here, disable here, and then eventually to isolate if the, possible problem I'm facing is or not related to Defender for Endpoint. Looks simple, but it's not. The problem is the feature Tamper Protection. I shouldn't say the problem, the solution is the Tamper Protection. If you are familiar, Tamper Protection was introduced a while ago, and the idea is not to allow any user or any administrator in kind of, shutting down this service, because that will, of course, downgrade the security level from the devices. And if Microsoft would make easy, for anyone to go there and shut down those main components like real-time protection, behavior monitoring, setting the device as a passive, in a case of a ransomware attack, it would be very easy for anybody to get in, eventually shut down those three or four main services to take over the network. The good news I have for you is the Tamper Protection is enabled in a tenant mode, and even if you are administrator, as I will show now on my demo, you won't be able to do that. And then of course the million question here is, okay, how can I troubleshoot any problems in order to identify if the spike on the CPU is caused by MDE or by the software itself. Anyway, let's keep moving, and I will explain what is the right and the safe way for you to do that. Before that, I need to touch base when it comes to the EDR and the Tamper Protection. As you can see, both of these features, they are enabled in a tenant level. And then kind of, I shouldn't really say unfortunately. What I want to say is you are not able to say, oh yeah, let me disable quickly Tamper Protection from 20 devices for me to kind of perform any, testing and so on, and then we will enable later. No, it doesn't work like that. The same story for the Tamper Protection. If you really need to disable this feature, actually you should not do that, and then you need to go to a tenant level, disable for every single device on your organization for you to be able to eventually do the troubleshooting to disable the other MDE services. But this is why exactly Microsoft introduced the troubleshooting mode that will open a 3-hour window. Then that's the place where you can disable all the security controls only on that device, and then eventually when your testing is done, Microsoft will revert all the configuration you've done. It means to bring the security to a good level after 3 hours automatically, okay, without kind of compromising any other system. Okay, anyway, this is a bit of review I wanted to provide, but now let's dive into the kind of the action. Let me run a good demo for you to understand how all those features are connected together. Okay, let's get started. Here are a couple of key steps I want to present in order to show how all those security are related to each other. Initially, I want to show where you can go in order to check if the EDR block mode and Tamper Protection are enabled or disabled on your tenant. Okay, let's dive into it. Okay, the place to go is always from security.microsoft.com, and then here on the left, let me quickly dive into settings. And then after clicking on settings, just make sure you go over endpoints, click in there, and then I should be able to go straight into the advanced features. Yeah, here are the main feature I need to check. First one, as I said, the enable EDR in a block mode is enabled, and as I told you before, this is for the entire tenant. Okay, there is no way for me to make any exception to isolate 3 or 4 devices. And same story if I'm looking about the Tamper Protection, same story is enabled for the whole tenant, and again there is no way for me to make a quick exception here to isolate 3 or 4 devices. Anyway, easy peasy, I would say. The next thing is the following. Some of you could be thinking, okay, if I want to downgrade the security level to, isolate any spike on the CPU utilization and so on, we could quickly create a grow policy, disable real-time monitoring, disable behavior monitor. I could set my MDE as a passive and so on to downgrade the security level, and then for me to be able to do the troubleshooting. Actually, it doesn't work like that. This is why Microsoft introduced the troubleshooting mode. But anyway, just to to save your time in doing all the tests, I did that already for you. Let me dive straight into my virtual machines, and first, really quickly, this is a domain controller. As you can see, I have here a grow policy. Please remember the name called MDE passive and disabled mode. Really quickly, if I go here, click on edit, let me just maximize. Now let me dive into what will be some of the key security features from the MDE point of view. If I go here, advanced template, and here, okay, as you can see, turn on Defender AV as a passive is enabled. Okay, I kind of thinking to set as a passive. If I go here and then very quickly go to real-time protection, as you can see, turn off real-time protection. Okay, I want to switch off the EDR is enabled. Turn on behavior monitoring. I want to disable. Okay, it means in this case means real-time protection is enabled and EDR. No, sorry, I'm trying to disable real-time protection and I'm trying to disable the behavior monitor as well. Okay, this is kind of my thinking to downgrade the security, to isolate a CPU utilization and so on. Okay, but the way it works is not really like that. If I go now for my server 2019 and go for a rsop.msc, first of all, I want to make sure my server, by the way, is a server 2019, is getting the grow policy. And then next step, I want to show you if those features are really disabled thanks to the grow policy, coming from the domain controller. Okay, this is the result. If I go here into the administrative templates, go into the Windows Defender ATP, yeah, as you can see, turn on Defender in passive is enabled and is coming from the right the grow policy. If I go over here and then eventually go over the real-time protection, as you can see again, the real-time protection and the behavior monitor are coming from the correct grow policy from my configuration. Okay, but what's happened is the following. If now I run a PowerShell command as an administrator in here, and then eventually let's check the ultimate way to see if those services are enabled or disabled. If I go to get MP preference initially and hit enter, interesting enough is the following. If I dive straight into the behavior monitor, in this case, please remember, is like disable behavior monitor is false. Okay, it really means this feature is running, is not disabled. The same story, if I go to disable real-time monitoring, is false again. Okay, what I want to really prove to you in here is the following. The grow policy I created to push a configuration to downgrade the security protection from my server 2019 actually is not working at all, thanks to the Tamper Protection. And please remember, this is from the security point of view, this is a good thing, because it will make difficult or much more difficult for a hacker via PowerShell to downgrade the security from thousands of devices. Another thing I want to show when it comes to the attack surface reduction action, 1 means block mode, okay, 2 would be audit mode. And then if I go down here somewhere on the, I believe is on the P something, on here, the PUA protection mode is 1 as well. It means is in that block mode. Okay, now the key question is, okay, if eventually, things are not looking good and, for a few minutes or few hours, I need to shut down MDE in order to understand why there is a CPU spike or why MDE is blocking some of my application and so on. The right way to do that is actually, okay, I've already done, those steps. The right way finally is for me to show the troubleshooting mode. This is the safest way you can downgrade the security protection in order to identify, something happening on your device. Okay, just I forgot to provide the get MP preference, because based on the grow policy, my device should be running on passive mode. Let me just quickly go back in here and type get MP computer. Oops, there is a typo. Get MP computer status. If I just go up in here, yeah, in this case, the EDR, okay, took place. My server 2019 doesn't have any other antivirus, but is running on passive mode. Now let me see if I can actually disable the other service from my server. Okay, to do that, I need to jump back into the portal. Okay, if I go back, and the place to go is over devices. Now, from the devices, you need to pick, whatever is the device you want to enable the troubleshooting mode. And then let me explain all the steps, the right steps you should take in order to make the MDE configuration more relaxed. Okay, now let me dive into my server 2019-04. Let me click in there. From here, if you are familiar with MDE, we could be checking the alerts, we could be checking, the software inventory and, other bits and pieces. But let's go straight into the main subject for this video. If I click on those three dots, and then the place to go is here, okay? Turn on troubleshooting mode, okay? If I click in there, very important for you to understand, when this troubleshooting mode kicks in, finally, the local administrator will be able to do whatever the configuration is needed. It means, to shut down the real-time protection, to shut down, or to stop, maybe is the right way to say, to stop the EDR. I can inject some exclusions. I can disable Tamper Protection and all of those things. And then the way it works is the following. It will work only for actually 3 hours, okay? I can do, whatever the configuration I want for the next 3 hours. And then the good thing is after 3 hours, Microsoft will revert all the configuration I've done. Eventually, if I was able to identify what was causing, the CPU spike and so on, and then I could now go to my main configuration and add, for example, an exclusion for a process that was overkilling the CPU. Anyway, let's keep moving forward. What I'm going to do now is click Submit, click in there, and then now if I go back to my virtual machine, as you can see straight away, from my server 2019, I got a notification saying the troubleshooting mode has started. And then if you are wondering, okay, but if you are not in front of the, if you are not connected to the server, how can you know? The best way to do is the following. If you do a get MP computer status, click in there. Here is the important bit you need to know. As you can see now, I can double check when, let me just zoom a little bit here, Now I can check when the troubleshooting mode has started, the time and the date and time. I can see when is going to expire and, how many more minutes I still have in order, to do whatever is needed with the troubleshooting. Okay, now one more time, please make sure you follow all the steps to understand, the way you should be performing yourself. One more time, if I go to get MP preference, okay, enter in here. Now, if I look in here, I'm looking for the behavior monitor, is still enabled. If I go to my real-time protection, where is it? Oops, too far away, sorry. And then if I go to the real-time protection, is enabled as well. Okay, now for me to change the configuration, the way to do is the following. Okay, now let me show all the steps. The first one is I need to disable the Tamper Protection. To do that, I need to go for Set MP Preference, and then dash disable, and then Tamper Protection, and then $, I really want to disable, and then it means is true. Okay, no red message means, that's good. Now let me disable the other 2 or 3 key components. The first one, or another one, sorry, is the real-time monitoring. Okay, let me disable that as well. And then finally, let me do the same, just trying to get a bit of time here, buy a bit of time. The next one is the behavior monitoring. Okay, that's great. Now, if I check the configuration in here, let me just do a quick zoom for you to understand those 3 commands. Not too complicated. Set MP preference, disable Tamper Protection, true. Set MP preference, disable real-time monitoring, and then disable behavior monitor. Now, if I try again to get get dash MP preference, and then I should be able to see those commands, disable MP preference. Click in here. Now, if I have a quick look, yeah, as you can see, disable behavior monitor is true. It means, yeah, now the EDR is disabled on this device. If I go down and check now, disable real-time monitoring, okay, is true as well. It means AV is not taking any blocking action on, you know, whatever is happening here on my device. Okay, now let's say I want to make sure I want to kind of exclude a process from MDE. There is a heavy process. I'm sure that process is not causing any, you know, security concern, and I want to isolate, I want to exclude that process from MDE to avoid MDE to kind of doing the checks all the time. To do that, let me just review here, and then you can take a look on the key commands. As you can see, what I've done already is I disable Tamper Protection, real-time monitor. Okay, now the next 3 commands I could use is to set the ASR as audit mode. I want to set the PUA as an audit mode, and then eventually, you know, I could add some exclusions to avoid the Defender for Endpoint in order to kind of keep verifying some good applications. Anyway, let me run those you know, few commands. First one is the attack surface reduction. Let me dive back into my device. And now let me set the ASR in audit mode. Let me set the PUA on audit mode, and then finally I will add exclusion as well. To do that, I need to go to set MP preference, and then here is attack surface reduction. Next one, rules ID. Yeah, this is the one. And then the action I want is actually audit mode. Okay, that's job done. Now, next one is set MP preference is PUA. Yeah, protection. And then in here, I want to set as audit mode as well. Okay, that's great. Now, the next and the final step in here is, you know, let's say I have identified what is a good application that MDE is kind of, you know, checking and, you know, is causing a CPU spike. To do that, I can do a set MP preference and then exclusion. I could exclude a whole path, you know, C, data, payroll, but that's actually, you know, is not the best practice because, you know, any other files on that path will be not verified anymore. And then instead to exclude a full path, is better to exclude a process. And then in here, I could say, okay, let's say is C, data, I don't know, let's say data, finance. Let's say there is a file called finance.exe. Okay, just a kind of, you know, pretending story. Click on enter. Okay, that's fine. Now, finally, if I have a look again on, not set in this case now, get MP computer, no, get MP preference. If I hit enter, if I look in here, let me see. Oh yeah, the exclusions in here, I should be able to see the process I added. Where is it? See, okay, exclusions, extension, processes. Yeah, in here. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, here just to prove to you the process I added is in here. See data finance. Okay. Anyway, just to kind of, you know, follow my thoughts one more time, get, sorry, if I go here, and check now via get MP computer status one more time. Yeah, it means all the configuration I've done, if you can remember, all the commands I've done was disable Tamper Protection, and then I disabled the real-time monitoring, and then I disable the behavior monitoring, that is the EDR, and then eventually I make some changes on the configuration for the ASR and the PUA, and I added another process into the exclusions, my finance.exe, and all of that configuration, they will be there until, let's say 7 p.m. Yeah, until 7 p.m. After that, the system will roll back all the configuration to avoid, you know, any compromised security. The thing is, if I was able to identify that finance was causing a CPU spike or so on, Now, after this test, I can go back to my grow policy configuration and then eventually make the configuration I did, permanent when it comes to exclusion. If I've been using Intune to push the exclusion, I could go to the Intune policy and then eventually set add, that finance.exe into that as well. 3 hours plus have passed since I started recording this video, and now let me check the results. If I type get MP computer status, in here, as you can see, the troubleshooting mode now is disabled. It means that 3 hours window I had to be able to change the configuration now is gone. If I go back and try get MP preferences, I want to point out 3 important settings. The first one is if I go up over the disable behavior monitoring, as you can see, the configuration went back as false. If I go back to check the disable real-time monitoring, again, it was the same behavior, it went back as a false. And if you can remember, I quickly added an exclusion process for cdatafin.exe. I was just pretending it was my finance.exe process. And then, as you can see, that little process is gone from the configuration as well. I still have other configurations here, other exclusions, but they are coming from the grow policy. Okay, I haven't added in that troubleshooting mode from those 3 hour window. Anyway, that's interesting the way it works. Now everything I've done in that troubleshooting mode is gone. And then, if I was able to identify, the finance.exe was the missing process, now what I need to do is to go back to my main configuration, grow policy, system center configuration manager, or Intune, and then eventually make the exception from the, what could I call, permanent configuration to apply that to all the devices. Before I finish this video, I want to comment 2 important things. The first one, The first one is the following. Let me just go to get MP computer status again. And then from here, anyway, from the grow policy, I've been pushing the configuration to force my device to be running as passive. This is a server 2019, and actually now it is running as passive. If the device would be on active, the output in here would be as normal. EDR block mode means passive. Based on my experience working with server 2012, 2016, and 2019, if you don't have another third-party AV running at the same time and you push the passive mode via grow policy or whatever the configuration, to be honest, I'm getting some, let's say, mixed results. Sometimes the device, become as passive, as you can see in here, but in other cases, it doesn't go to a passive mode and keeps running as active. As quickly I said before, Microsoft introduced the active passive for us to use when kind of migrating from a third-party tool, not to be used as a troubleshooting. And another one I want to comment is in regards to the behavior monitor or to the EDR. By the time I'm recording this video, there is no way out of the troubleshooting mode. Okay, if you're not using that 3 hour window from the troubleshooting mode, there is no way for you to disable the EDR via registry, via grow policy, or so on. The only way you can disable the EDR is via if you offboard the device from the Defender for Endpoint, let's say, a tenant. Okay, that's the only way you can disable. Or of course, as I explained at the beginning of this video, if you go to the tenant configuration, to the advanced settings, and remove the EDR block mode for the entire tenant, and then of course that will work. But if you leave the master configuration as blocked mode and try to disable try to disable the EDR mode in a single device, it doesn't work unless you offboard the device or unless you do what I just did via the troubleshooting mode. Okay, you know, maybe Microsoft will change that setting, but again, by the time I'm recording the video, this is the normal way the Defender works when it comes to the real-time monitoring and the EDR or the behavior monitoring. Anyway, this is what I wanted to present on my troubleshooting mode deep dive module. If you enjoyed this video, please give a quick like, subscribe my channel, follow me on LinkedIn, and see you on the next module. Thanks for watching.